we interrupt this program to bring you Courage, the Cowardly Dog Show, starring Courage, the Cowardly Dog!
You're listening to That's Pretty Dark,
the podcast where we talk about all of the entertainment that scared us as children
and still haunts us as adults. So grab your flashlight and join us as we take a frightfully nostalgic look over our shoulders
and under our beds
and in our closets.
And together we'll realize, whoa, that's pretty dark.
Pretty dark.
There are a strange amount of songs about werewolves, I feel like.
I know. I like a lot of them.
What a week. What a weird... Life always imitates art in some way for us.
Serendipities galore.
Because we're prepping to get ready for October and doing things kind of in advance, I did a lot of this research a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Then this week, the week that we're supposed to record, I talk about the doctor and all the things that we get to in today's episode, which is about...
The Weremole.
Courage the Cowardly Dog and the Weremole, / Mother's Day.
Mm-hmm.
But as I just did all this research 2 weeks ago, and then this week I just randomly break out in hives, and for no good reason. Never had them before.
Sucks.
And I have changed nothing. I've used the same detergent since I was in like 8th grade or something.
You've smelled the same since 8th grade.
I've smelled the same since 8th grade.
Do you think you're turning into a weremole? Maybe a werewolf?
It wasn't something that I considered, but then I did remember this research, and I thought,
Speaking of your research, I did a little bit of my own.
Did you?
Do you have any of these signs?
No.
You have...
I've been on WebMD, so symptoms
This is just
galore,
as good as WebMD. This is pretty much the same thing.
Okay.
These are 9 signs you might be a werewolf. Do you have hairy palms?
Last I checked, no.
Mismatched fingers?
What does it mean by mismatched
I don't
fingers?
know. I have clinodactyly, so I have mismatched fingers. Mine are kind of crooked.
Yeah, you do have that. I mean, I have a crooked finger, but it's because my finger got broken in a door frame by my sister when I was little.
Do you have glowing eyes? Do your eyes ever glow? Like glisten maybe in the moonlight?
Well, they have been red.
Ooh, that's not a good sign. Abrasions on the arms and legs?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Do you have unquenchable thirst? Like dry tongue and eyes? Do you have red eyes?
Dry eyes to the point, my eyes are always watering. I've been told that's because they're dry.
But you don't drink much water, so that might not be.
I don't drink enough
Do
water.
you thirst for blood, though? Do you have like a...
Yes. When I'm at the doctor and they're dismissing me, I thirst for their blood.
Oh.
Does that count?
Yeah.
Like when I'm angry is like a rage thing?
That counts. That totally counts.
Perfect.
Ooh, this might also qualify. Craving for raw meat?
No, not raw, but I do like a good steak or a burger. I've been eating a lot of hamburgers. To be fair.
A lot of hamburgers. Okay.
Like more than I used to, I guess.
I get it. Do you ever howl?
All the time. You've heard me howl, right?
I heard you howl.
I do howl.
Before we were starting this recording, she was just like,
ow, ow, ow. I definitely
life
howl.
is so hard.
For sure. That's a fun activity. If you've never howled, I highly recommend you try.
I howl sometimes. My cats don't know what to do with me.
Yeah, but that's confusing for them.
And lastly, do you have a unibrow?
No. I guess you didn't diagnose me. I was kind of hopeful.
Well, you have like 4 or 5 of the 9, so you're
I'll have
kind
to
of...
bring that up to my doctor next time, and they'll probably...
maybe they'll listen to this nonsense.
I'm sure that'll help me help them believe me.
They don't listen to anything else you say. Wow. Just keep soaking it. Nothing to worry about.
Soaking it. Okay, wow.
Nothing to worry about.
So on that note...
My name's Christian.
My name's Kaylin.
Welcome to That's Pretty Dark.
And as I said, and as this very painful introduction, painful literally for me, introduction has described, we are covering, like I said, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Season 1, Episode 5, Night of the Weremole / Mother's Day.
That's right.
And I know that we always say this, but the order of these episodes on streaming, particularly from this point forward, are just hopelessly jacked up. Like
now
there is
I get why you confirmed with me the other week, because you were like, are we sure this is the next one? Because it was what, like number 11?
Yeah, it was like the end of the season.
Max?
On Max, HBO, whatever.
It's wild
they
stuff.
are this week. So it'll be a surprise for you if you're not keeping up with the list that we're keeping up with. How fun. The Fandom Wiki says that this episode aired on November 12th, 1999. IMDb contends that it aired on December 17th, 1999.
No.
So
contends.
Yeah, they're in contention. I have no idea which is true. why they were airing a Mother's Day episode in either November or December is confusing to me.
See, now you understand why I like to stay true to seasons.
Yeah, this does
it's
feel
really jarring.
What is the word? Anachronistic. It is quite out of time, out of sync, out of step.
I think that has to do with like eras and like decades of time that are quite different. But
that's fair.
Sure.
It's some smaller scale version of that feeling.
Right.
But we don't know much, clearly.
I don't know anything.
Or right up front, we don't know a whole lot. But what we do know...
I've never known much of anything at all.
This first half, The Night of the Weremole, was another episode written by our friend, David Stephen Cohen.
That's right.
And directed by John Dilworth.
Our friend in spirit and soul.
So for Night of the Weremole, we open on a crescent moon in nowhere. Courage and Eustace are snoozing in front of the TV, which is playing a B movie from 1959, and we will talk about that later.
Sweet.
Don't worry.
Sweet.
But Muriel is outside tending to her vegetable garden.
A little bit of night gardening never hurt anybody.
Exactly. I laughed a little bit at this because in a lot of regions, this might not make sense or people might be confused. But I wasn't surprised in the least to see her gardening at night because
Why?
We have to beat the heat somehow.
Oh, you think that's it?
And it is much more pleasant. Yeah, for sure. It's much more pleasant to garden by moonlight than it is to be drenched in sweat.
Sure. Well, under a harvest moon, technically, which is kind of timely because harvest moon's coming up.
And just an FYI, we've broken over 2,300 heat records this summer in America.
Jeez Louise.
Just in America. So, yeah, night gardening might become more prominent over the next few years. We'll see as we continue to cook alive.
It sounds nice.
But instead of this relatively cool, peaceful evening gardening in the moonlight, Muriel is subjected to quite a fright. And I didn't mean to rhyme.
Yeah, you did.
And I'm not going to anymore because this isn't Freaky Fred times. So
I'd say it was a close shave, but she definitely got cut.
Why, look at this. A wee rabbit.
Muriel is approached and enamored by this very disturbingly blank-eyed bunny
They're
rabbit
so creepy looking.
while she's gardening. And she starts to rummage in her very full basket for a carrot to offer to this rabbit, which you can see the carrots and she's not grabbing them and I don't get it. But then this ominous creature burrows toward them and pops out of the ground and fully chomps this rabbit when her back is turned.
Big old chomp.
Just a one fell swoop.
I was surprised to see it. Literally bite the thing.
I know.
Drag it underground.
Even worse than that, though, the extended silence after the rabbit gets eaten is deafening.
I know.
Because it's just a chomp and then it's just this quiet beat of like, well, that just happened.
Yeah.
Rabbit. Where did you go?
But Muriel, ever the optimist, is still wagging the carrot toward this crater that the creature has caused, hoping to lure the rabbit out again. But she is instead violently bitten by what we can now see is a mysterious-looking mole creature.
It's like a rogue Bugs Bunny.
Yeah, sort of. And I remember this as a kid. I remember seeing her be bitten as a child. Like I said, it's rather violent in the moment.
It is.
And I think part of that is the unassuming situation. It's kind of idyllic and you're not
it's
really,
a pleasant time.
You should expect it because it's nowhere and it's courage. But
you feel like it should be safe to be outside your home at night, but sometimes it's not.
Yeah, I don't ever feel safe outside of my own home at night, but that's another story.
I actually don't either.
So once Muriel's bitten, we abruptly cut to the office of the teetering on offensively stereotypical Dr. Vindaloo.
There's nothing to worry about. There's nothing at all. Nothing at all.
This is his first appearance, but it's definitely not his last, and he's also voiced by Paul Shuffler. There's a poster that says, Dilly says don't smoke, hanging behind Muriel as she's examining.
It's always that same drawing, too, of that
Yeah.
character. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, Dilly says don't smoke.
Frankie says relax.
And the doctor's doing his exam, if you can even call it an exam. I would say it really isn't. Despite Muriel's hand being at least 10 times its normal size, Dr. Vindaloo insists that there's nothing to be worried about, nothing at all.
The swelling is going to go down. To go down. Just keep soaking it. There's nothing to worry about. Just keep soaking it.
It is so ironic that I had the same experience this freaking week.
Where they were like, hey, just soak your hives.
Yeah, it'll go away. No, they didn't ask me how, why, no questions, nothing. Just
That's so funny.
whatever.
Everything online says if it lasts more than a few days, like, see your doctor.
Exactly. And I wrote this stuff 2 weeks ago.
Foreshadowing.
It's crazy because what I wrote is, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't triggered by the doctor being so dismissive and repeating the same unhelpful phrases over and over.
Just keep soaking it.
Courage and I are both skeptical of this guy. And while I've certainly been the Muriel who is obviously dealing with a very serious ailment, but not wanting to be any trouble,
I don't want to be any trouble. Thank you, Doctor.
nicing myself into oblivion, just as she does, I am far more often the Courage, the alarmist who is sounding the bells and trying desperately to be heard and understood.
Right.
Although I'm never the Eustace, because
no.
Eustace blames Muriel for being bitten,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't expect any less from Eustace.
We no longer expect much from him.
So the bags head home, and Muriel gets busy soaking her hand in the kitchen sink. Maybe she wanted to knock out the dishes at the same time. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know why she needs to soak it in the
somehow it
kitchen.
worked.
But it works. Her hand goes back to normal.
I would just take a long bath.
Yeah, there are other options,
A
Muriel.
little bit of Epsom salt, some candles.
She can't relax, bless her heart. My grandmother, my mama was like that too. She was always doing laundry or dishes or something. She couldn't sit down, couldn't sit still.
That's when the existential dread sets in. So
Exactly.
You
gotta
busy.
keep moving. Gotta outrun the thoughts.
I don't pace around my house when I have things to do or think about.
Of course not. But as she's doing this, she's suddenly distracted by the very realistic full moon outside her window.
Oh, yeah.
And she begins moaning and sweating as if she's coming down with some kind of fever. But when Eustace sends Courage to find her, she is hunched over the dog bowl and spins around to growl at him, showing some seriously sharp fangs.
Why is it so much more disturbing to see her eat
It
dog
is
food, like
because
something
it's
that
so primal.
it's subhuman, right? Like, it's-
Exactly. It takes that step back.
Yeah.
And like just like the bite, seeing her eating from the dog bowl is also a core memory.
Yes.
I don't know why I kept that, but I did. I was like, I don't like this. I hate this. And it is because of that. It's because this person that you know and love has suddenly been downgraded a step
Yeah.
of not a person anymore, something else entirely. And that is exactly the point of this episode.
And interesting how it's 2 episodes in a row.
Yeah, 2 episodes in a row. I figured the same way we did with Bigfoot, we should get a little bit better of a grasp on this whole were animal lore. And I figured we also probably needed to do that due to resources available by way of the much more popular werewolf.
The werewolf. Yeah.
You may already have some familiarity with this, but as I learned from a convenient page on history.com, werewolves are, according to some legends, people who morph into vicious, powerful wolves.
No kidding.
Others are mutant combination of human and wolf, but all are bloodthirsty beasts who cannot control their lust for killing people and animals.
Yeah, dude.
So that's the baseline here.
I'm so pumped because last summer, leading up to our spooky season, we did the Nightly Neighbors, which was all vampire history and folklore. I'm pumped to have werewolves this year.
Right? It's a whole different animal, literally.
It is, but still pretty similar folklore.
There are a lot of similarities between a werewolf and a vampire, and I think we'll draw some of those conclusions together.
Nice. I do love also the deviations to were cat and were goat and things that are different.
Weremole.
I think it's fun.
It's unclear exactly when and where the werewolf legend originated. Some scholars believe that the werewolf made its debut in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest known Western prose, when Gilgamesh jilted a potential lover because she had turned her previous mate into a wolf.
Ah, I see.
But as we've seen with many of these old world legends, the myth is much more widespread than just that.
Right, yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Werewolves made another early appearance in Greek mythology with the legend of Lycaon.
Mm-hmm.
According to the legend, Lycaon, the son of Pegasus, angered the god Zeus when he served him a meal made from the remains of a sacrificed boy.
Wow.
And as punishment, the enraged Zeus turned Lycaon and his sons into wolves.
Lycanthropy.
This is probably where the etymology of lycanthropy, all of those things originated.
Or it was served as an explanation for what they already believed to be lycanthropy.
Right.
In potentially older folklore.
Right. It's just the
say?
etymology of that, lycan.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of idea. Werewolves also emerged in early Nordic folklore. The Saga of the Volsungs tells the story of a father and son who discovered wolf pelts that had the power to turn people into wolves for 10 days.
Yeah.
The father-son duo donned the pelts and transformed into wolves and went on a killing rampage in the forest. And their rampage ended when the father attacked his son, causing a lethal wound.
Wow, just what a day in the woods, going for a stroll. Nice hiking trip.
Yeah, until it's
Going
not.
fishing, just gone fishing.
the son only survived because a kind raven gave the father a leaf with healing powers.
Wow.
So it wasn't super clear to me if it was like he couldn't control himself and didn't know what he was doing, or if it was an intentional killing or attack. I mean,
I think that's like one of the big questions that's always asked when it comes to a werewolf attack. It's always
was it
like,
crazy out of your mind?
is it bloodlust?
Disease?
Is it
Or-
the literal like moon madness? Like,
Yes, we'll get there too.
I'm sure you'll talk about that. Yeah. Is it madness, or is it a manifestation of your own murderous, violent tendencies?
Right, exactly.
Maybe it is just a metaphor for abuse.
The lines get real blurry.
Real blurry.
Real blurry.
Duality of man.
As an absolutely perfect segue into my next point, continuing from history.com, many so-called werewolves from centuries ago were, in fact, serial killers.
Yeah.
And France had its fair share.
These are the stories that I hear on so many different podcasts.
Yes.
Like, I love these stories.
There are lots of these. So you may have heard some of this on Lore. There are other podcasts that go into it. I'm trying to give an overview.
No, I love it.
So I'll mention a few.
It's a rite of passage,
Yeah.
For podcasting, talking about dark history, you have to talk about this stuff.
We
I
learn
love it.
about the vampires. We learn about the werewolves, demonology. It's just part of the package.
I always wanted a place to talk about this stuff, and
Here it is.
I'm just tickled pink.
It has arrived.
Tickled spooky.
In 1521, Frenchmen Pierre Bergot and Michael Verdun allegedly swore allegiance to the devil and claimed to have an ointment that turned them into wolves. After confessing to brutally murdering several children, they were both burned to death at the stake, because burning was thought to be one of the very few ways to kill a werewolf.
Yep.
Giles Garnier, known as the Werewolf of Dole, was another 16th century Frenchman whose claim to fame was also an ointment with wolf morphing abilities.
Yeah, wow.
According to legend, as a wolf, he viciously killed children and ate them. He too was burned to death at the stake for his monstrous crimes.
Wow.
Whether Bergot, Verdun, or Garnier were mentally ill, acted under the influence of a hallucinogenic substance, or were simply cold-blooded killers is up for debate.
This reminds me so much of flying ointment with witches.
It's always a cream or a salve or some kind of...
It's like a hallucinogenic thing.
Yeah. Some sort of medicinal sort of conduit.
It's also interesting that they'd burn them like they would burn witches too. Like there's so much crossover there.
They did.
It's cool.
Yep.
It's very, very cool.
And I think it's because we also just, as humans, don't know what to do with it. And if we assume something is supernatural or beyond our control, we're like, I guess burn it. I don't know.
Well, that's the regard we hold fire at, like it's the all cleansing, destructive, purifying force.
It definitely gets rid of things that we can't otherwise get rid of. So, yeah. It likely didn't matter to superstitious Europeans during the 16th century what was going on, because to them, such heinous crimes could only be committed by a horrific beast such as the werewolf.
Yeah.
I do understand this to a degree, because most of us don't want to believe that humans are capable of such things.
Right.
And not to dampen your faith in humanity any further, listener, but spoiler alert, it's almost always the humans. Almost.
I mean, this is why we have the devil as a character in mythology and folklore. Because we need an explanation of something much more evil
to put it.
than we are. Because there's no way any human
could be that
in God's
evil.
image could be that evil.
Exactly.
So he must have been influenced by a dark entity, a vile beast.
And I get that, like, for purposes of just comforting ourselves as humans mentally, like, we want to believe it can't come from within us. We want to believe we don't have those.
Yeah. We also want to scapegoat. Like, we also want to not take responsibility for our own actions.
Exactly. For sure.
I think that's really more to the point.
It probably is, to be fair.
The devil made me do it.
Because it doesn't seem like any of these potential werewolves really sat around being very philosophical about why they had the need for this outlet, we'll call it.
And like, how many different types of mentally ill people have believed they were like a shoe, or like I'm a cockroach, or like different, they think that there's something that's not human. Like, I'm an airplane. Like,
maybe, yeah. It's just like
somebody in history just said, I'm not a man, I'm a wolf.
Right.
And people were like, oh my God.
And then other people were like, hey, I'm not a man, I'm a wolf.
That's not a bad idea.
Not to say that mental illness is not 100% real.
I'm Spartacus.
And obviously there are
I'm Spartacus.
differences in our identity in ourselves that may not be manifested in our bodies that we want to change or be more like ourselves. That is not what we're commenting on. What we're commenting on.
How am I not myself? How am I not myself?
What we're commenting on is this idea that there is disease or mental illness or just desire
A desire.
that causes these violent actions.
It wasn't me. It was the guy standing behind me. Yeah. Blurry lines.
So this one might sound familiar to you, like we were saying, if you also listen to Aaron Mankey's lore podcast, because he did a full episode on it. But to catch you up to speed or remind you, if you don't recall, Peter Stubb, a wealthy 15th century farmer in Bedburg, Germany, may be the most notorious werewolf of them all.
This is one of my favorite stories.
According to folklore, he turned into a wolf-like creature at night and devoured many citizens of Bedburg.
Bedburg werewolf.
Peter was eventually blamed for the gruesome killings after being cornered by hunters who claimed they saw him shapeshift from wolf to human form. He experienced a grisly execution after confessing under torture to savagely killing animals, men, women, and children and eating their remains. He also declared that he owned an enchanted belt that gave him the power to transform into a wolf at
A
will.
relic of folklore.
Not surprisingly, the belt was never found.
Talk about a treasure hunt.
He was executed on Halloween, October 31st, 1589. And as a warning against similar behavior, local authorities erected a pole with the torture wheel and the figure of a wolf on it. And at the very top, they placed Peter Stubbs' severed head. Should have probably given you a trigger warning for that one. But if you've seen Game of Thrones, then,
No, we are all
you know.
about the severed heads and the missing heads and the heads coming off of bodies. We talk about that a lot here.
unfortunately, a disproportionate amount.
Halloween, what a beautiful night to die.
If this is your first foray into That's Pretty Dark territory, I promise they're not all so gruesome. Some of them are.
Just the best episodes. No, I love this. This is so fun. I love this stuff.
There's even a reference to him, Peter Stubb, in the Exorcist novel, which I thought I would mention since we've been on a bit of an Exorcist kick lately.
You know, I have that book. I need to read it.
It's not entirely clear whether he was actually guilty of the crimes or whether there was sort of a political, werewolf hunt instead of a witch hunt.
Sure.
Because clearly there were a lot of other people involved in the capture or confession, because he confessed under
Duress.
like if you read what he actually went through, like brutal torture.
Sure, no, of course.
They killed his daughter, they killed his mistress. Like he was under the most duress I think a human person can be. So
yeah, it was pretty bad.
Whether this confession holds water or not is not really, I don't know that it does. But
yeah,
it seems that someone was killing, or they had these killings that they needed to get to the bottom of. So
somebody was killing people. Either he did it or he was the scapegoat.
So Peter Stump's legacy
Stump
is a big
or Stubb?
part of this. Well, Stump, Stubb, Stumpf. He has a lot of names. A lot of those names they think may come from the fact that his hand had been chopped off. And they claimed that they had cut that hand off the wolf, and that was how they identified that it was him. It was the same guy that was the wolf, because they cut off the wolf's paw and then
the missing paw, right?
he was missing his hand. So
I see.
some legends maintain that werewolves shapeshifted at will due to a curse. Others state they transform with the help of an enchanted sash or cloak made of wolf pelt or the ointment like we were talking about.
Right.
Still others claim that people become wolves after being scratched or bitten by a werewolf. And in many werewolf stories, a person only turns into a wolf when there's a full moon.
Right.
And that theory, like
Here
you
it
mentioned
is.
earlier, may not be all that far-fetched. It's a little bit older, but it is an interesting study. According to this study conducted at Australia's Calvary Mater Newcastle Hospital, a full moon brings out the beast, quoting in many humans. The study found that of the 91 violent acute behavior incidents at the hospital between August 2008 and July 2009, 23% of them happened during a full moon.
Ooh.
Patients attacked staff and displayed wolf-like behaviors such as biting, spitting, and scratching. If you work in healthcare, oh my God, thank you for what you do, because people deal with this all the time.
Yeah.
It's pretty spooky. And although many of the people in the study were under the influence of drugs or alcohol at the time, it's still unclear why they became intensely and more violent when the moon was full versus when it wasn't.
Right. I mean, animals will sometimes act irrationally during full moon. And I know that I sleep worse
On a full moon?
during full moons. Like the 2 or 3 days around the full moon,
Yeah.
my sleeping patterns get all jacked up.
Yeah,
I
it is
cannot
weird.
sleep to save
I've
my
noticed
life.
differences in my symptoms too.
I usually have very long, bad nights.
Yeah, on full moons.
Yep.
I like to think of it as there being more energy available
Yeah.
than we really know what to do with or how to process.
Could
But
be.
who
Well, I
knows?
mean, the moon affects the tides.
For sure.
So I think it obviously does something. I don't know
It has
what on a
lot of
scientific
effect
level,
on us on Earth,
but
for
it
sure.
probably does
Gravity.
affect. Well, yeah,
Gravity works, as Batty says.
it's a distortion of space time.
Mm-hmm.
It probably does affect the fluids or the amount of fluids in your brain.
Oh, 100%.
Like I'm sure.
Brain, body. Obviously, we know there are connections with women and, menstrual cycles, etc.
I mean, there are fluids in the brain that we don't even know what it is.
yeah.
And I mean, like, who knows what the moon does to that?
Mm-hmm.
To some, maybe even to some people, not even everybody.
Right.
Who knows?
Right. And I mean, I've been researching this a lot this week with the hives
Yeah.
that I've developed. One allergen or
Am I a
reaction,
werewolf?
nothing is the same body to body, person to person.
No.
So there is absolutely no telling the effect that something like a full moon has on certain people, and some more so than others, clearly.
I just think it's all so interesting and fascinating. I
It's
love it so
very,
much.
very interesting to me.
Harvest moon is so soon. Ooh, I'm gonna turn into a werewolf.
Yeah, you are. It's coming for us. It's coming for both of us.
If you could, just for like a night, experience the werewolf,
Oh, 100%. Of
I would
course
so
I
do
would.
it. In
Yeah,
a heartbeat.
absolutely. I have a wolf tattoo. I don't know if I've ever talked about it on the show, but
Well, I do too.
yeah, you do too. We both have wolf tattoos. So it's like we're both very into the idea of wolves as an animal. Wolves and lions are some of my favorite animals. So if I could experience that, even for a night, I don't want to kill anybody though. Let's
No, I mean,
let's
no,
be clear
no.
about that. I don't want to have that experience, but to just be a wolf.
It's not about the murder, Kaylin.
Well, it is for some werewolves,
Well, that's true.
an unfortunate number of them, as we've come to see.
I just want to reign a terror on the suburbs. I just want to go destroy trash cans and like.
I could see it being useful.
I want next door to blow
You want
up.
to be
I want next door to be like, oh my God,
wanna
I
be
just
the
saw a
reason
coyote. I just saw
that
a werewolf.
everybody's obsessively refreshing their next door page.
Dude, I mean, okay,
You could do that now. You don't even have to be a wolf.
I could. You know that our city, we have a werewolf story in our history back in the 70s.
I didn't look that up.
And it said that she came off one of the ships at port.
Oh, actually,
in the
yeah.
bay.
I have heard this because we worked at a haunted attraction. So.
Right. So came off the ship and then just dwelled in downtown.
Mhm.
It was in the newspapers, like spotted.
Werewolf.
Werewolf spotted. I found a news article.
That's crazy.
Really cool stuff.
Similar to that, although maybe not similar at all, there are a couple of closer real world ties than even these that we're talking about.
Mhm.
And those relate to disease, unfortunately.
Here's the vampire lore.
Right.
Rabies and shit.
Take Peter the Wild Boy, for instance.
Hmm.
In 1725, he was found wandering naked on all fours through a German forest. Many thought he was a werewolf, or at least raised by wolves.
Yeah.
Peter ate with his hands and couldn't speak. He was eventually adopted by the courts of King George I and King George II and lived out his days as their pet, gross,
Ugh.
in England. Research has shown that Peter likely had Pitt-Hopkins syndrome, a condition discovered in 1978 that causes lack of speech, seizures, distinct facial features, difficulty breathing, and intellectual challenges.
Is that from isolation or living on your own, or
No.
it's just a disease?
I don't think so. I think it's just a genetic thing.
Wow.
These types of behaviors can manifest through neglect,
Okay, yeah.
but I think that specifically is genetic. Don't quote me on it though, listener.
Do you think this particular story was like, we don't know what to do with him, so we're going to make him like a court sideshow attraction almost?
Yeah.
And we're going to say he was found in the woods and he was feral and raised by wolves.
Absolutely, yeah, maybe.
But they just took him in and kept him chained to a wall and he acted
It's
like an animal?
totally possible, yeah, that they just made it up because he had some sort
Wow.
of disability that they didn't know how to care for, which don't even get me started.
And it looks like, look how good we are. We took him in. We're feeding him and taking care of him. But
We're being charitable to this creature
Yeah.
of unknown origin. Who knows?
this poor creature.
It just goes to show also that disabled people have been treated horribly and still are being treated horribly every single day. And it makes me,
yeah.
if I'm going to go insane about something, if I'm going to go full werewolf mode about something, that's one of the things that
Beast mode.
really, really gets to me, because anybody with a disability or a chronic illness is just a subhuman citizen. Nothing has made that more clear than COVID. Nothing is...
Right.
Anyway, I could rant about that for days. But there are other medical conditions that I need to talk about.
Let's do it.
Other medical conditions that may have encouraged werewolf mania throughout history.
Ooh.
Some of these are, we mentioned before, lycanthropy, which
Yeah.
is a rare psychological condition that causes people to believe they're changing into a wolf or other animal.
Right.
So it's like the mental health diagnosis of this that has come around in modern times. Food poisoning.
Really?
Yep, that's on the list of things that have tended toward werewolf mania, because I guess there are certain types of food poisoning maybe that do make you,
Yeah, sure.
like, neurologically, they can have neurological symptoms or whatever else.
Wow.
hypertrichosis, which is a rare genetic disorder causing excessive hair growth.
Okay.
If you want to talk about sideshows, I feel like people with hypertrichosis have been exploited for hundreds of years in sideshows like this. The hairy man, or even women like the bearded lady or whatever.
Lady.
Those are most often medical conditions like PCOS.
I remember watching on like MTV, VH1, who knows what, of like the Wolfman, a guy and his like kids.
Yeah.
He had like a family and they all had the same genetic
thing.
Disorder.
Hypertrichosis.
Crazy. Because it was like, you mean that stuff is real?
Right.
And then you realize that they're just people.
Exactly. Hallucination, possibly caused by hallucinogenic herbs. We've talked about that a couple times on the show, as being responsible for different types of mania or madness. And last but certainly not least, the one that you knew was coming, rabies.
Yeah, buddy. I think that's the one that would get me.
Rabies personally really, really bothers me. Always has since the days of Old Yeller, since the days of To Kill a Mockingbird.
Mad dog syndrome.
All of which are bad news bears, and none of which I would like to experience.
Bad news wolves.
Bad news wolves.
Bad news doggy dogs.
Like we've been saying, throughout the centuries, people have used werewolves and other mythic beasts to explain the unexplainable. In modern times, however, most believe that werewolves are nothing more than pop culture horror icons, made famous thanks to Hollywood's 1941 flick, The Wolfman.
Love it so much. Love it.
We will have room to dive into their place in pop culture a little more this October.
Ooh, yeah.
Just leave you with that, listener. Now, take pretty much all of that lore, including the rabies bit, because that becomes important later too, and apply it not to the behaviors of a wolf, but the behaviors of a mole. And now we're all up to speed.
Oh, that's what we're talking about. A weremole.
Upon seeing Muriel growling over the dog bowl, Courage immediately shrieks, clutches his heart, and goes down hard. And I want to say this isn't the first time Courage has had a cardiac event.
No, he doesn't.
But with Muriel in that state, are we to assume that Eustace called 911 for Courage?
I was wondering the same thing, because it sure wasn't Where Muriel.
Courage ends up right back at Dr. Vindalu's office.
You almost bought it, boy. What is up with that?
Which I take to mean died, as in bought the farm. Yeah. I'd forgotten that was a phrase, but you almost bought it. I was like, oh yeah, that is a thing people used to say. I've heard that said.
Almost bought the farm.
He almost died. But he declares that it's nothing to worry about. Nothing at all.
God, this doctor.
And I have been there. I've been almost dead and told, don't worry about it, you're fine. Few things are more frustrating.
You're not bleeding out.
So I deeply relate to this. Yeah, I'm not bleeding out. I'm not dying. I, in fact, was.
Close, but no cigar.
The narrator says she was, in fact.
The story of your life. Can I narrate the story of your life?
Yes, you can. Absolutely.
She was, in fact, bleeding out.
And I deeply relate to this next scene because Courage won't stand for this.
Nuh-uh.
And he just picks this man up.
Takes him to the
all
actual
the way
farm.
Back to his farmhouse because he wants him to just pay attention.
He sets him down.
Please.
He says, look.
Somebody pay attention. My microphone is peaking. Dear Lord, that is...
Mine too.
I relate to almost nothing in this episode more than that. Just the idea of like, I'm going to take you and put you here so you can see it for yourself.
Willful ignorance.
Yeah, that's frustrating. Now in the farmhouse, and forced to confront this reality, Dr. Vindalu approaches Muriel in her rocking chair, innocently watching her program.
This is one of 2 times that we see her sitting in the rocking chair from behind. It's eerie.
It is very eerie.
It spooks me.
I even looked it up because I was like, there's something, that shot in filmmaking is called something when you're approaching somebody from behind like that.
You can't see their face.
And you can't see their face. I looked up what is that called because I was like,
yeah,
that is something.
You
see
anything?
That tactic in horror cinema, in films in general, all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't because everything that I was finding was like over the shoulder shot. I was like, I know what an over the shoulder shot is.
It's not
That's
an
not what I'm
OTS.
asking about because if you're unfamiliar, an over the shoulder shot is just a conversation or a perspective shot where you're seeing over the shoulder of a character.
It's very intimate.
This is like, I'm behind you and I'm coming up upon you and I don't know what to expect and it makes me uneasy.
My favorite, I think the best done version of this of all time was The Others. Have I ever made you watch that? Have you ever seen that?
I don't think so, but we've talked about it before.
This October.
The Others.
We're watching it as soon as possible.
We shall.
Based on Turn to the Screw.
Okay. That's why we've talked about it before. That makes sense.
But yeah, if you guys have seen it, you know what I'm talking about.
Your son here says there is something wrong with you. What is up with that?
I'm watching my favorite show.
Still the same film, The
I
Wasp
want
Woman.
you to open your mouth and say, ah.
He has her open her mouth and say, ah, but she unexpectedly does the big ol' chomp to him. Just as if he's the rabbit and she's the mole.
Quite a jump scare.
I've definitely wanted to chomp a doctor or two, adding to that list every day, so I get it.
Craving for raw meat.
But then, in a very unsettling fashion, she spits him out, sprouts claws and crazy red hair, and burrows directly into the floorboards.
Dude, always with the red hair. When
Yeah.
she's possessed
When
by
she's
the mattress
possessed, her hair
demon,
turns red as well.
I was thinking about that. She's Scottish.
Mm-hmm.
You think when she was younger, she probably had red hair?
Oh, I think for sure her hair was red,
So
yeah.
when she's affected by these horror iconic images, she's younger?
I
It gives-
don't know that it's younger.
It
I don't know.
de-ages her.
I think that it's just a color thing. Like red is scarier than anything
Yeah.
else they can make it.
I don't know. Horror gives me life.
But maybe that'd be nice if it were just like a nod back to younger days.
Maybe that's part of her background. Who knows?
Courage attempts to get help from a bathing Eustace, and he's not convinced until Mario herself burrows into the tub after Courage. Dr. Vindaloo claims
That is the worst case of chickenpox I have ever seen.
before being snatched down into the depths of the house as well. Eustace decides this means that there are mice in the house, and he wants to find a mallet. I don't know if this is because he can't see or he's in denial, but we run into this pretty often with both of the bags.
Right.
It's another example that we see where Courage can't speak English, and he might be a lousy typist according to the computer. But the portrait he draws of Mario on the wall and his attempts to explain the situation to Eustace is damn good, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's pretty clear. Pretty clear.
Computer breaks it down for both Courage and the viewer in the next scene.
What you've got here is a weremole.
It's funny that Computer already knows the name for this creature, and the weremole is apparently a cryptid in nowhere,
They come out in the full moon, and they've got a taste for rabbits and people.
which is a very specific prey drive that they have.
And if you're bitten by a weremole, you'll become one yourself.
That's right.
I feel like this absolutely fed into my fear of rabies as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I had already had that foundation of things like To Kill a Mockingbird, Old Yeller, and then this sort of idea, I was just not okay.
I just kept going back to my mom changing into something I don't recognize.
Also, absolutely horrific.
You mentioned the bite, like her getting bit being burned into your memory.
Mhm.
For me, it's her transforming into this monstrous thing.
Yeah,
Like
come up behind her
specifically
and she
when
sprouts
she's
claws.
yeah, like when she's in the floor and like comes up and is like growling and stuff.
Uh-huh.
That
She's something else.
sticks with me as like
She's not Muriel.
this was a show on Cartoon Network for kids. Like what?
Yeah, it was.
What is this?
That's pretty dark.
Pretty dark stuff.
If I were you, I'd get a big mallet and...
Thankfully, even with Computer's tendency to insult and condescend, and after offering the same violent solution that Eustace was predisposed to, the Computer shares the antidote.
Get a little hair of the mole that bit you.
Of course, this sent me down another research mole hole,
Mole
about the hair of the dog that bit you. Most of us millennials have heard this expression touted as a hangover cure involving in indulging in more booze. And the idea may have some basis in science behind ethanol and methanol metabolism. But do you know where it originated?
No, sure don't, but want to.
I don't really either, but we have some theories that I'm going to talk to you about.
Okay, all right.
The expression originally referred to a method of treatment for a rabid dog bite by placing literal hair from the dog in the bite wound.
Oh, God.
Ebenezer Cobham Brewer writes in the Dictionary of Phrase and Fable, 1898, in Scotland, it is a popular belief that a few hairs of the dog that bit you applied to the wound will prevent evil consequences.
Good Lord.
This was 1898.
Good Lord. Not that long ago.
No.
Weren't there like a bunch of scientific advancements? They knew what diseases were. They knew what cures were, quinine and shit.
Yeah, it is wild.
I mean, bless them. They tried so hard, but
of course, it wasn't like an instructional thing in 1898. It was phrase and fable. It was talking about where it came from. But
okay.
still, that was like a prevalent belief.
So it was referencing back to an earlier time.
I hope so. Not
okay.
immediately clear, but I do hope so.
Not a home remedy you want to try.
When the phrase is applied to drinking, it means if overnight you have indulged too freely, take a glass of the same wine within 24 hours to soothe the nerves.
Hair of the dog that bit you.
There's a little phrase that I guess came from some other text that he put into his book. If this dog do you bite, soon as out of your bed, take a hair of the tail the next day.
Okay. And he's talking about alcohol.
Yes. I think
So these are all metaphors.
yes. From this part,
Okay.
yes. These are metaphors for overindulging.
I was taking it literally.
I mean, well, it was literal. At first it was literal.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time, it was literal. It was,
Woof.
if a dog bites you, put hair of the dog in the wound. That was the
Woof.
literal treatment.
Ugh.
He also cites 2 apocryphal poems containing the phrase, of one of which is attributed to Aristophanes.
Okay.
It's possible that the phrase was used to justify an existing practice, as the idea of like cures like,
Okay. Yeah.
which dates back at least to the time of Hippocrates. In the 1930s, cocktails known as corpse revivers were served in hotels.
Oh.
They were serving specific like hangover remedy cocktails.
Didn't they use pieces of like human body? Like to cure like a headache, you would drink something, consume something that had like brain matter in it?
Not that I saw.
I have read something
hope
about
not.
that before. I have to find that again. Wow.
But I mean, we did talk about this a little bit with
Sympathetic magic.
sympathetic magic in Once Upon a Forest.
Right.
If it looks like the thing, like cures like.
Yeah. Like cures like.
There are dozens of references to this concept in dozens of languages, from Europe to Asia to Africa. I have some of the phrases written in those languages, but I am not going to attempt those things today
Okay.
in my state, but I will tell you the translations of the phrases because I think a lot of them are really good.
You want me to try?
Sure.
I'm just curious.
This is Russian.
Is it in the chat?
Or sorry, Romanian in the chat.
Oh, let's see here. Qui pe qui se scot.
That's Romanian for
Scoti.
a nail pulls out a nail.
Okay.
That's what that means. There are similar phrases to that in Italian, Spanish, and Turkish. And in all 4 cases, the English translation is a nail dislodges a nail. Though these phrases are not exclusively used to refer to the hangover cure. It's just a simple like cures like mentality.
Huh. It also doesn't logically make any sense.
Not really.
Like,
Not to me. I think it's like
No.
it says a fastener, so it may not be the nail that you're thinking of in our Western current get a nail at the hardware store nail.
because like a hammer pulls out a nail, you know, or like a different tool altogether.
The way that our tools look and work, yes, but maybe that wasn't the case for fasteners previously.
I'm sure it's all context.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
In German, drinking alcohol the next morning to relieve the symptoms of a hangover is sometimes described as having a counter beer.
All right.
And in Japan, drinking alcohol the morning after drinking too much is called a phrase in Japanese that I also can't attempt. Sorry, I need to just rephrase that because I put them on there. I was like, if I feel squirrely, I'll say them.
Squirrely.
I'm not feeling squirrely.
Frisky.
And in Japan, drinking alcohol the morning after drinking too much has a phrase which is roughly translated to counter drinking as well.
Okay.
In Austria, people talk about having a repair beer.
All right.
I like that one. And in French,
Soigner le mal par le mal.
which means cure evil with evil. In China, alcohol that's drunk to relieve a hangover also has a phrase which translates to the drink that brings back your soul.
That's what I need.
I know. I need that just in
God.
general.
Mm.
In Japan, the equivalent phrase can be translated to alcohol for facing or greeting the next day.
Okay, that too.
The earliest known reference, though, to the phrase the hair of the dog in connection with drunkenness is found in an ancient text from the mid to late 2nd millennium BC, in which the god Elu becomes hungover after a drinking binge.
Elu.
The text includes a recipe for a salve to be applied to the forehead, which consists of hairs of a dog and parts of an unknown plant mixed with olive oil.
Wild.
So
That's just so weird. Like, why?
I still think that the rabies connection has a closer application to the hair of the dog being like a cure, and then it just evolved into like cures like, and that's what brought us the hangover application.
I guess so. That's just crazy. I've heard about that forever. Never tried it.
Yeah, no, me neither.
I feel like getting up the next day and having another drink is a very far leap toward becoming an alcoholic.
Yeah, honestly, maybe.
You know what I mean? Like, I know that it helps. It's supposed to
It
take
can
the
help,
edge off.
depending.
But, my God.
Computer says that's the cure, though.
No, a lot of people do.
Just don't get bitten.
So Courage, determined to get this mole's hair, then stands in the yard in a rabbit costume as bait.
Yes.
Things he does for love.
The things he does for love. You know why? Because the weremole,
Don't eat dogs. Oh, wow.
they don't eat dogs.
Doesn't
They
eat dogs.
They crave rabbits and humans.
People. So he has to look like a rabbit.
He has to go be a rabbit.
Yes.
Poor Courage.
Meanwhile, Eustace is searching for his mallet upstairs in places that it is clearly too big to be.
Dude, I know. Well, it's like where Courage pulls out all the chains from under the bed.
I know.
During
I know.
Team in the Mattress.
You never know what's going on in the bag
Like
bedroom.
all kinds of stuff under their bed.
Ah, me mallet.
But when Muriel the Weremole bursts through the floorboards, a deeply unsettling game of spousal whack-a-mole begins.
Dude, I love this so much. I was laughing so hard. Like, it lasts forever. This whole sequence.
When you talk about scenes lasting a long time, the whacking of the mole lasts for like 3 minutes of this 8-minute episode.
It is such a long time. They totally needed to kill time. They needed to like fill space.
We're just going to show this really scary looking thing over and over.
There's not much to the actual story itself.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I was just like...
We have to play up how visually scary this is. Yeah, I get that.
I thought Max was looping on itself. I was like, there's a glitch.
It's not
clearly
over yet. Yeah, it's
But
pretty
no, this
rough.
was so funny. I was like, oh my God, whack-a-mole.
Whacking moles.
That is so freaking funny.
And listener, if you know me at all and you've seen the detours that I've taken so far today, you know that I had to do a little digging, pun intended,
Into whack-a-mole.
on whack-a-mole.
Yes.
Because when else am I going to get the chance to do that?
Probably never. Yeah, let's go back to some arcade games, man.
Well, yeah.
We also talked about arcade games last summer.
I know. It's a very summertime feel.
Cyclical, man.
So, as you may or may not know, whack-a-mole originated in Japan.
I did not know that.
A game called Mogura Taiji was invented in 1975 by Kazuo Yamada of Togo. I hope that's how you pronounce it. TOGO. It's a company. And released as Mogura Taiji to Japanese amusement arcades in 1975.
Wow.
It became a major commercial success in Japan, where it was the second highest grossing electromechanical arcade game of 1976 and again in 1977. So it just rose to popularity real quick, skyrocketed.
So you can have yourself a drink to socialize, and then you can go play whack-a-mole.
Yeah, I don't know if there were Dave and Buster's in Japan at the time.
There should have been.
There always should be. Mogura Taiji was licensed to Bandai in 1977, and Bandai introduced the game to the Japanese home market as a toy in 1977 called Mogura Tataki, which is Mole Smash.
All right.
It was a major hit in the home market by 1978, selling over 1 million units.
Wow.
In the late 1970s, arcade centers in Japan were flooded with similar derivative like Mole Buster games, but not Mogura Taiji itself necessarily. Sometimes that, but just a lot of games that played on that theme, right?
There's always knockoff versions, right?
Well, like America does, we had our own plans for this game. Mogura Taiji made its North American debut in November 1976 at the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions, the IAPA show.
Huh.
We have some friends that attend this show, where it drew attention for being the first mallet game of its type.
All right.
A couple of carnival moguls saw it and saw great potential for converting it into a carnival game by putting it in a trailer.
Yeah.
So, of course, the Americans snatched up this opportunity.
It's the American way.
It's the American way to just steal stuff and call it ours, right?
Just take things that aren't yours and say it's yours.
Mm-hmm. One of these moguls showed the game to Aaron Fetcher, who basically gets credit with inventing whack-a-mole as we know it.
Wow.
Just ripped it right off. And they assigned him to the task of building their own version of the game.
True American.
Fetcher coined the name whack-a-mole, so at least he does have that.
Okay.
And added air cylinders so that when air pushed up the moles, the air acted as a cushion. So he made it that like not hydraulic, but air pressurized game.
Air hydraulics.
God, I'm not an engineer. I'm not a physicist.
No, I don't know the term. Rusty, what's the term?
I say physicist. Like that's what this is. It's not. Okay.
I'm not a scientist.
He developed that prototype in 1977, and this team presented it to the founder of Bob Space Racers, which provides games and management services for arcades, parks, and trailer industries throughout the world. So you may be familiar with that.
Bob sounds like a fun guy.
Bob Casada. After Bob made further refinements, Bob Space Racers began selling the game in 1977. And in 1978, it debuted at a Midway exhibition show, where it was the most popular game. The following year, it debuted at pinball parlors, and in 1980, it was sold in the Carnival, amusement park, and coin-operated markets.
I love all this so much. Why does it sound so fun?
And so Whack-A-Mole has since become a popular carnival game, which is what I think of. I think of it as like the fair, the midway
yeah.
carnival game, but it obviously is also a very popular arcade game as well. The original Whack-A-Mole game is said to have inspired the first genre of games with a violent aspect as central to the user experience.
Yeah, like beating something to death.
Yeah, thanks Whack-A-Mole.
A small animal.
Thanks Whack-A-Mole.
Thanks Whack-A-Mole.
Researchers have used Whack-A-Mole and its variations to study the violent aspects of these games.
Of course they did. Man, it goes back to even before video games.
Yes.
This makes you violent. You can't play violent games or it turns you violent.
I don't really know how I feel about that, to be honest, because like first person shooters, I've played them. They can be fun to play, but it's like, I don't know what that does to the brain chemistry of a young kid, the developing mind. I have no idea.
Nothing.
Nothing?
It does nothing.
Nothing at all?
No.
Okay.
I played all those games growing up.
Well, I'm not saying that anybody that plays them becomes a violent person at all. I'm just saying, like, if you crave that outlet, I mean, I guess it's better in a video game than in life, but...
No, if you have that, it's already in you, and it's going to happen regardless of whether or not you ever play a video game.
I don't disagree with that.
You either have it in you or you don't.
I hope that's true.
It is true.
Colloquially, of course, we use whack-a-mole to refer to a situation characterized by a series of futile Sisyphean tasks where the successful completion of just one yields to another popping up elsewhere, which is my whole life.
Well,
it's life with ADHD, honestly. It's life in...
Sisyphean?
Sisyphean. Like, it's just mindless and you do it again and again and it doesn't mean anything.
I've never heard of that before.
Denoting or relating to a task that can never be completed.
Huh.
The pursuit of perfection is a Sisyphean task.
That does feel like my life.
It absolutely feels like a life. Part of it is our ADHD, I think, but like my healthcare issues, medical issues, every time I get something figured out or just feel like I'm feeling good in my body, something else happens, like these damn hives. It just never ends.
Doing laundry.
That is...
Cleaning the kitchen.
Oh, doing laundry, cleaning the kitchen. All of those endless Sisyphean tasks, tasks that can never be completed, are so painful to me.
Me too.
So painful. That is almost one of the worst. Like, even eating to me sometimes feels that way.
It's
like,
so... God.
I hate having to eat
it's
so
such a
much.
burden.
Yeah, because it's just... I guarantee you this is our ADHD, and anybody that doesn't have neurodivergence that's listening is like, what are you talking about? But that feeling of never being able to get it done and always having to do it again, having to rework or do something a second time, all of those things are so painful and difficult for me personally. And I think whack-a-mole is a really good metaphor for it because it is that endless whacking of the moles. And whatever you push down brings something else to the surface. Sisyphean.
Huh.
It also reminds me of the one scene from The Office where Dwight and Angela are at that Dave and Buster's type of arcade, and Isabel, which is Dwight's recent conquest, whacks Angela in the forehead when she pops up behind them.
It's pretty good stuff.
So good.
Like an Angela.
Back to Courage, though. And like you were saying, I think it's okay that we took a break because this scene took forever. We have repeating shots of Eustace getting terrifyingly close to whacking the mole, and it's terrifying for both Eustace and for Muriel.
And for us.
Because he's about to smack his wife.
Yeah.
These are interspersed with shots of Courage being chomped on and shaken like a rag doll by the weremole outside, who seems to have fallen for the rabbit costume.
I also love the Foley, though, of clearly what's the rabbit ears, like flapping against each other. You hear the rubber like...
Yep, this costume.
So fun.
And it sure looked like Courage got bitten to me.
His feet are too small. Look how small his feet are compared to the rabbit feet. The weremole had the toes.
The mole is chomping on the costume. Okay, that checks out. Speaking of, he ends up slipping out of this costume.
Yep.
And while the mole continues trying to tear it to shreds, Courage makes his move. And I don't know why, but I thought it was so funny that on his first attempt at approaching the weremole with the tweezers, Courage, he's just like inching forward with the tweezers toward the mole. And then as it's just like this tense moment, he just loses it and screams bloody murder and runs away. Because he can't take the like concentrated pressure of which
I get it.
I felt that way too.
I get it.
He can't take the concentrated pressure of this moment, so he just screams.
Courage is all of
and
us.
runs off. That made me laugh out loud.
He is all of us.
And it reminded me of like tense moments where I'm trying to kill like a wasp or a roach or something that's in my house. Like the worst feeling where I'm like approaching it like I'm gonna do it, and then I just bail out at the last second because I can't bring myself to.
It's me making phone calls.
Eventually, Courage manages to pluck a singular hair, and just when all hope seems lost for Eustace, Courage appears and drops the hair into Muriel Weremole's open mouth, which grossed me out so much.
Gross,
and I also didn't love the way that she choked on the hair. But we see before our eyes this werewolf facade dissolving.
What'd you do? I almost had it. You ruin everything.
But.
Stupid dog.
They creep downstairs together to see if the cure has worked. And sure enough, Muriel is plopped in her rocker watching her programs.
That same behind the rocking chair.
Same behind the rocking chair shot. I personally don't know if I'd be so quick to trust her after seeing that she's capable of hiding or suppressing the werewolf instinct, and then it just comes out of her.
Yeah, he just jumps right in her lap.
Takes to it for a good snooze. But like I promised a couple times, I figured before we wrapped up this segment, we could take a look at the movie that is supposedly Muriel's favorite show.
Yeah.
The Wasp Woman. After reading a bit about it, I can tell it was definitely up Dilly's alley. Not to be confused with Dilly Dally. I feel like we've made that joke a bunch of times.
Dilly's
I'm
alley,
sorry.
silent D.
It was up Dilly's alley. I looked up a lot of things about The Wasp Woman, but I really didn't like anything better than I liked this one IMDb'er's review of the film.
Okay.
So that's what I'm going to share with all of you to get the vibe.
Sweet.
Would you like to read it?
Me? Sure.
I'll give you something to read. You always throw me a bone. A hair.
The plot of this film has the head of a cosmetics firm trying out a new formula formed from the jelly of a queen wasp. The makeup actually makes the woman younger, but has the horrible side effect in that it turns the woman into a killer human wasp. Oh, what a silly film this is. It's also a great deal of fun. The story is wildly silly. There's a monster that looks ridiculous, and enough skill behind the camera to produce just the right amount of tension to keep you watching. It all combines to form a perfectly charming little movie. Good, but far from great, The Wasp Woman gets its classic status from the fact that this film used to be in permanent rotation on late-night horror TV. I can't tell you how many times my mind was warped by this little gem over the years. It seemed it was always on, and pretty much everyone I knew saw it over and over again. It became a joke of sorts as the quintessential bad movie. Its bug-eyed monster in tights was exactly the sort of monster you didn't want to see in a movie. Highly recommended to those who want to see what horror films used to be like at the height of the drive-in era, or to those who just want something to keep themselves distracted on a dark and stormy night. I love that. That's so fun.
I thought it really captured the essence of the film, and it made it make a lot of sense why they might have chosen it.
Yeah.
Or why, John Dilworth or even David Stephen Cohen might have chosen it. It sounds like both of them, because not only was it that like quintessential, it's in the zeitgeist that everybody knew what it was, and it was just that movie.
Yeah.
But also it involves a woman merging with a creature.
Yeah, no, it's perfect, honestly. Wow.
And it's that nod also to that era of horror.
Because as we've said before, the Nowhere landscape, the whole Courage universe does have that mid-century vibe to it.
And I love the comment of like what horror was like at the height of the drive-in era.
Oh yeah. We just keep circling that whole era.
Did you know my grandparents met at a drive-in? I think they met there because my mama worked there. Worked at a drive-in theater.
Meeting at a drive-in.
Yeah. My dad's parents. It's kind of cool. I have a fondness for drive-ins for that reason.
Yeah.
And many more.
The couple things I found interesting about this movie, it was originally released as a double feature with a movie called Beast from Haunted Cave. So I'm going to have myself a movie night where I do this double feature. I'm going to watch The Wasp Woman, and then I'm going to watch Beast from Haunted Cave.
Just as Nolan intended.
They both, exactly. They both look terrible, but I'm going to have myself a drive-in era little experience.
It's a good
and you're
time.
welcome to join if you want to.
Yeah, that sounds like a good time. And I love also that it was a fixture of late night TV, which means both John Dilworth and David probably grew up seeing it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So that's just fun.
I also noticed that the music in this movie was done by Fred Katz, Katz.
No way.
And so it seems really interesting.
I wonder if they took inspiration there as well.
Maybe so. Apparently he's a very famous cellist and composer.
Let us know, David, if you hear this.
Let us know. Emphasis on
And
the
if you're
carrots.
aware. I just really like the added layer of like generational sci-fi.
No, I think that's super cool. I love that.
Made me happy.
That now we've seen this twice. We saw it with Bigfoot, and we see it in Weremole, where they're just late at night watching scary movies, eating blueberry pie.
They live a quaint little life other than all of the terrible evil that surrounds them.
Sci-fi horror unexpected happens. With any luck, that'll be our future.
With any luck, that will be.
That was our childhood, but with any luck, we'll have it again.
I hope so.
In our later
That's all we're
years.
doing is trying to get back to that.
It's the only reason I'm still on this planet.
Now where'd that mouse get to?
To cap off the episode, Eustace is still, for some reason, preoccupied with the mouse because he's in denial, I guess.
I swear, all this bother over a wee mouse.
Muriel. Sweet
As happens
Muriel.
in nowhere, though, they're not out of the woods yet.
Oh, no.
And when watching it back, I totally forgot the tag at the end, where Dr. Vindaloo comes back as a weremole through the floorboards.
Like a freaking sandworm-sized weremole, too.
Yeah, and snatches Eustace through the floor before becoming the next whack-a-mole target.
Is there a doctor in the house?
Which cracked me up because, yes, there's a literal doctor in the literal house.
God.
That's pretty good writing, if I do say so myself. Bravo,
Much
David.
better than the end of the Bigfoot episode with the banana in the mouth.
I know. Random banana alert. So, you know what time it is now?
Scarometer!
Scarometer time.
The first scarometer of spooky season.
First spooky season scarometer.
What did you give this episode?
I've never been too afraid of werewolves personally, but I gave this one a 6.
Yeah?
Really only because of the mental connection that it gives me to rabies or like a bite or wound or infection that turns somebody into an unrecognizable monster. That's terrifying.
That's
to
fair.
me. So it gets 6 points.
That's fair.
And plus there's the whole dismissive doctor thing, which is all too relevant to my life.
Sure.
So gotta give it some credit there.
I'd give it like either a 6 or 7, maybe edging towards 7 because the whole like somebody becomes something you don't recognize.
Copying me.
Yeah, I'm just copying you. I'm just trying to look cool in front of you. And
Copying over off of
my
my
friends.
paper.
all of our friends listening have to look cool. What'd you put for number 7? The whole like your mother or someone in your household
Yes.
totally changing character.
Becoming something
completely.
else.
Becoming something that you don't recognize.
We talk about that a lot. It's brutal. I don't like that thought
It's
at
such
all.
a scary concept. And it's scarier when it's the person who loves you,
Right.
not the one that's always abusive.
A person that you're counting on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say 6 or 7.
Props to David. Props to the team.
Well done. I love this episode.
That is Weremole.
I forgot about it. I always remembered seeing Muriel look like that,
Yeah.
but I never remembered the exact
I didn't.
episode
Same.
where it
I
came
remembered
from.
I remembered the food bowl and the turning around, but I
Ugh.
didn't remember what episode it was in. So now we know, and so do you, listener.
See you guys on Mother's Day.
Now, guys, it's time to do a bit of a 180
Oh,
because the
man.
next segment focuses on horrors of an entirely different sort.
Oh, the dreaded
Oh.
Mother's Day.
Mother's Day. Mother's Day was written by Irvin S. Bauer and also directed by John Dilworth. And this is the infamous episode we've referenced a couple times where we get our first look at Eustace's home life and his childhood growing up.
Right.
And it is a sad, though not surprising, state of affairs.
In my memory, this was always a flashback.
I think there may be episodes of flashbacks as well. Like, this is not the last time we see Ma Bag.
Okay.
This
All
she
right.
comes back, but
I don't distinctly remember this episode. I just remember her being bald
right.
and that being a big deal.
Which is a plot point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I am going to go out on a limb here
Oh.
and say that most of us watching this in 1999 had yet to unpack or even realize the complexity of our relationships with our mothers.
I know.
But boy, oh boy, it's very clear that the creators were at least aware of the work to be done in their own maternal relationships and the cycles, past and present, though hopefully we're on a better trend these days, that generations have found themselves in.
Yeah, considering they were mostly a team of men who probably had very complicated relationships with their mothers.
Complicated maternal relationships, and also not exactly understanding her perspective, but being old enough to sort of understand her perspective.
Right, yeah, to kind of tie it in a clever, intelligent way.
Yeah. Buckle in is all I can say. Again, it's horrors and triggers of a whole different variety, so...
Yeah, it's not something you realize till like you move out of the house.
Yeah.
If you had a mother around when you were growing up, it's just built in. It's like any other family holiday.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really feel the pressure and the drama and the anxiety of the whole thing until you move out of the house, and then you have to show up for it.
Right. You have to enter that space again. And it's like in the case of this episode, and for some of us, the case is often that everybody reverts to a different version of themselves.
Yeah. Ooh, complex.
In the opening scenes, the Bags are discussing Mother's Day and the necessity of paying Eustace's mother a visit.
Yeah, man.
Eustace, it's Mother's Day. You have to go see your mum.
Then you're coming with me.
Oh, no. I'm not going to see that woman.
Muriel politely declines the opportunity to go see that woman, offering courage in her stead. Eustace concedes because he himself is that wary of going to his mother's house alone.
You're better than nobody.
But I found it, for one, so funny and kind of too real, personally, that Muriel, like most women doing the unseen, unspoken mental and emotional labor for an entire household, gave them their manners lecture and presented them with gifts for the occasion before sending them out the door.
And then when he's like asking her if she's sure she doesn't want to go, she raises her
She's
eyebrow.
Like, you know better than to ask me that question. But even not attending herself, she still has to put all of this effort into making sure that Eustace shows up and does the thing for his mother and does it right.
Are you sure you have all the presents? And be polite. Take your hat off in the house and give your mummy my regards.
I am so grateful if there is even the slightest shift in this paradigm for couples in 2023. Because obviously men can do better since the bar has been on the floor for like over a century. And seeing this example up front of this episode is a very interesting introduction because it presents the idea that maybe there's a reason that not all mothers make it out with the best reputation.
Yeah, and here I am thinking how nice it would be to have somebody around to just show me what to do. And here, you know what? You take this. I got the gift. You just take it. Take the flowers.
See, no.
Take the chocolates.
Be a person. Everybody's got to be people, and it bothers. Like there are women that enjoy doing that and taking care of those things, but it shouldn't be the expectation that that is just presented and go. Like it's,
I'll be a person. I'll just stay home.
And that's the other thing. Yeah, she's also pushing him out the door to go and do the thing.
I just want to stay home.
And also in a related way, the joke that went right over my head as a child, but hit me in the face as an adult. Here we have the nicest person in the world who sees the good in everyone and everything, cryptids, creepies, and all, but she still doesn't want to deal with her mother-in-law.
No, I know. It's so funny to me.
It's funny, and at first it was funny to me, but then it still has a Tim Allen-esque misogynistic flavor to it because the villain is still the mother, even in the perspective and the eyes of the other mother.
Where does Tim Allen come into this?
The Tim Allen era of misogyny. Of women versus men. Men are like this, women are like this. The idea that the mother-in-law is the worst creature in the world. That's the Tim Allen
he to blame?
humor.
Like, why are we?
He's not to blame, but he definitely shaped a lot of the culture and ideas around men versus women. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. That whole idea.
I'm thinking more
Muriel
Jerry
just
Seinfeld
is
has
a
the
character in
whole...
that. Jerry Seinfeld too.
The difference between men and women.
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
Be off with you now. My favorite show is starting.
So in the car on the way over, sitting on an incredibly realistic looking old leather bench seat of the truck.
Yeah, that was oddly impressive.
It looked like old leather. I mean, it looked
so
like
much texture to it.
Texture, exactly. And Eustace gives Courage the real lecture.
Here's the plan. When we get to Mars, I'll give you the high sign. That's the high sign.
Eustace wants to give Courage the high sign, which is scratching his own chin, and have Courage then attack his mother like a mad dog.
You know how to growl, don't you? You just open your mouth and...
And I gotta tell you, I was excited to learn the origin of that phrase, high sign, but I couldn't find it. It was just a given. This is what this phrase means.
Oh,
a high sign
interesting.
can refer to any prearranged covert signal, and it originally referred to what we would call the OK signal.
Oh,
with
yeah.
Index finger and thumb, 3 fingers in the air.
Sure.
And I also found out it was common enough in vernacular by the 1920s that it ended up being the title of a Buster Keaton film.
High sign.
So lots of people were giving each other high signs back in the day.
Apparently, that was a big thing to do in social situations.
Probably because none of them could say what they really thought.
I won't speak. I'll just give you the signal.
Hi, Ma.
Then in the doorway of her trailer, we meet Eustace's mother, who looks suspiciously like Bigfoot's mom with a mountain of red hair. But she's not voiced by Lionel. Instead, she's voiced by Billy Lou Watts, who had been voice acting since Astro Boy in 1963 and throughout the 70s and early 80s in shows like The Flying House. Yep, that's us house. The Flying House and Superbook.
Wow.
She was the voice of Ma Bag throughout the series and lent her voice often to other nameless characters to 39 episodes of Courage in total.
Yowza. That's a lot.
She had her voice in a lot of episodes of the show, whether as Ma Bag or otherwise.
That's almost half of them all.
Honestly.
Wow.
And so begins a barrage of insults
I like it.
and downright mean behavior toward Eustace.
Dude, it is just perpetual. I watched this episode twice today, and I feel worse because of it.
Yes.
I feel bad about myself.
Like I said, a barrage. And if you don't want to use my weird made up word, you could just call this verbal and emotional abuse.
Yeah, if you just want to call it what it is.
That's it. That's all it is.
Pretty brutal stuff.
She calls him,
Eustace, you stupid boy.
Stupid boy.
sound familiar?
Yeah, stupid dog.
Sound familiar?
Yeah, that's there's just so much to unpack here. Man, first of all, how old is this woman?
Yes.
She's got to be ancient.
I have that question as well.
Lord.
If Eustace is as old as he reads, don't know how old she is, which is part of the comedy, I think.
Right. We'll talk about the hair too, but
Yes.
she's got all of her teeth, unless they're dentures.
I would assume they're dentures.
Who knows?
As they stand here, before they even enter her house, Eustace tries to give Courage the high sign. And when Courage hesitates, Eustace smashes his foot and tries to play it off as if Courage has attacked Ma Bag.
Mad dog! Mad dog! I'll protect you, Ma.
But it's too late for this ruse. Instantly, Eustace can't do anything right. And to the further detriment of Eustace, Courage can do no wrong.
Oh, man. Worst case scenario.
For Eustace, for sure.
That's no way to treat my little Courage. We'll go in and sit down and have us a nice visit.
Listener, did you ever play Opposite Day with your siblings?
Yeah.
We used to play that a lot, where it was like, whatever I say, it's the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
And we would really use it to just say mean things to each other.
Just
Which I'm sure
insult
is
them
a
and-
common sibling
it's opposite day.
occurrence.
You know what? We did that too.
Sometimes it was just opposite day.
It was always that until it devolved into, well, if you say it's opposite day, then it's not.
Exactly. Yes. We had that argument.
That
too.
is the children's paradox,
Yeah.
is calling something an
It's
opposite day.
But if it's opposite day, then it's not opposite day. For
If
sure.
it was opposite day, you would say it's not opposite day, and then it would be.
But this situation is kind of like that, because from the insulated Eustace on top world that we're usually seeing, Courage is the underdog.
The underdog.
And at first, Courage does not hate this paradigm flip, because Ma Bag is actually defending him to Eustace.
In a way that's like way more domineering than Muriel ever is
Yes.
to influence Eustace.
Mm-hmm. Other than when Muriel smacks him over the head with a rolling pin.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Well, yeah. Aside from her own domestic violence. Sure.
And it would be nice to see Courage getting this recognition or validation if it wasn't so clearly hypocritical and didn't also have such an echo of neglect reaching hauntingly back through the decades to Eustace's childhood.
Very well put.
The abusers are often so painfully blind to their own behavior, or worse, they think it justified. Eustace then makes an attempt at the polite routine Muriel suggested, theatrically taking off his hat indoors, and apologizing for being impolite.
I'm sorry, Ma. How impolite to wear my hat in the house.
Put your hat back on. You look like a billiard ball.
Because he's bald,
You know what they say? If you want to know someone's insecurities, look at their criticisms.
Yeah, exactly. It's very true.
Don't you feed him. Poor little fella looks hungry.
The insults and guilt trips never let up as Ma forces Courage to sit down to a meal, as I'm sure most of us have been obliged by a matriarch at one time or another in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
She insists that he must be fed in spite of multiple protests to the contrary, and Courage is now caught in the middle, trying to placate both of these deeply, deeply wounded folks.
It's not my fault. I'm not even hungry.
When Ma brings food for Courage over to the table and Courage tries to share to keep the peace, Ma makes it about herself.
No wonder the little dog wants to share his food. You're all skin and bones. If you'd come to see your ma, you might get something to eat. But do you come? No!
And who among us millennials has not been on the receiving end of this leap of logic while actively in the presence of family members who are less than easy to spend time with?
Yeah.
I promise if you yell at them while they are around you, it does not encourage future visits.
Absolutely not.
Eustace answers,
I'm here, ain't I?
"You're yelling at me for not being here while I'm here."
While I'm here. And saying,
Yeah.
like, I might feed you if you came around more often.
Right.
Now that he's there, she's like, I guess you want me to feed you, don't you?
Exactly. Because, like you're saying, she then moves on from guilt tripping to a hearty helping of gaslighting.
Yeah, and I suppose you want me to feed you too.
Yeah, I can't be pleased.
It's that feeling of being completely unable to win.
Right.
Like we just talked about with the whack-a-mole, the Sisyphean, endless, there is nothing I can do to win or be right or answer this correctly.
Yeah, no matter what he says, she's going to be determined to find some issue with it.
As we know, this is how Courage lives his daily life.
Right.
Because of Eustace.
Yeah.
And the hope would be that Eustace would have a little bit of self-awareness and recognize this and look to end this tortured cycle. But the cycle and a lifetime of a power struggle is, of course, what actually created the monster he became.
Generational trauma.
Generational trauma. I feel like there are two types of people: those that experience it and never want anybody else to ever have to experience it, and those who experience it and think because they experienced it, other people should also have to experience it.
Yeah.
We see this on the social medias all the time, on the Facebook,
All the time.
etc.
God.
Especially living in the South where we live.
You said it.
In fact, as soon as Ma has gone to the kitchen, Eustace is yelling at Courage again.
What are you doing sitting at the table, dog? I'm not.
And when she brings a tiny plate of food back for Eustace, she begins to bark out a series of drill sergeant-like commands, complete with backing drum accompaniment. Thank you, Jody.
Two of the most pitiful pieces of bacon I've ever seen.
I know.
Don't put your head down. Don't eat too fast. Put your socks up. Don't slouch. Sit up. Why can't you be more civilized? Like Courage. Don't talk with your mouth full. In fact, don't say anything at all.
Everything's contradictory. Some things are totally unrelated to what's happening at hand. And it's just too real. It's too real.
It is. It's very, yeah.
Yeah, that hit me pretty hard. I was like, damn, okay.
Yeah.
But like every little old lady does, she invites them into the next room to chat.
Stop making Ma like you so much. Got it?
There's a hint of twisted jealousy in his tone now.
Eustace, come here, you stupid boy.
And yet again, Courage is put in the middle of their relationship. He reminds Eustace of the presents, hoping to bring them together. And while flowers and chocolates are immediately rejected, the mirror seems to be a hit.
Because of the narcissism.
Exactly. It made me laugh that Muriel knew that the only thing Ma Bag would really appreciate is herself.
Narcissus.
She then asks for a photo, and at first, this excites Eustace to get a bit of attention, and he holds the mirror as she powders her face for the photo. But then she hands off the giant camera to him and pulls Courage in for a photo instead. What's pretty dark, though, is that during this whole exchange, Courage is seated next to them chowing down on chocolates.
On chocolate. I know.
Dogs can't eat chocolate.
Well,
Everybody knows that.
yeah, but it's kind of funny because I don't know where I heard this or if I looked it up. It's not as bad for dogs necessarily. It is, however, really bad for a cat to have chocolate. So it's like sure death for a cat.
Wow.
For dogs can actually have a certain amount before it becomes toxic.
Dang.
But it just shows like how much of our society has put an emphasis on dogs versus cats.
That's true. Us poor cat owners
I know.
having to figure things out on our own.
Introverted cat owners, we can't win.
Buzz is laying on the floor right now next to me. Sweet boy.
Sweet boy. But yeah, eating that whole box of chocolate would probably not be
Yeah,
good.
I feel like regardless of any tolerable amount, it would make him very sick.
That got my attention, and is also like her eating the chocolate before spitting it out. Like she can't tell it's chocolate before she eats it.
She's like, well, maybe she can't see very well. We know that's an issue with the
I think
bags.
it's less about hating the chocolate and more about
rejecting him.
being able to spit it back at him.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know I don't like chocolates.
She's pleased with their photo, though, and leaves to get a surprise for Courage. But while she's gone, Courage, who has been stupefied by the camera's flash, takes a series of accidental photos of Eustace, which leads to Eustace trying to strangle him as per usual.
Why don't you pick on someone your own size? Ready for your surprise?
And while berating Eustace, she presents Courage with a big yellow teddy bear. To me, this bear seemed very specific. Like it's yellow and its tongue is sticking out, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of the artists or creatives in some way had one like it growing up because it's so distinct.
Yeah, it could be. I just like how Courage like nuzzled up to it. He like hugged it.
He got himself a teddy bear.
It's so cute.
Oh, Courage.
It's cute.
Bless him. He puts up with so much shit.
I know.
Hey, that's mine.
Eustace seems to reach his breaking point now because the teddy bear used to belong to him.
Yeah.
Like your first child might act as a toddler, when a younger sibling comes along and gets a hand-me-down, Eustace pitches a whole fit complete with stomping and whining, the whole 9 yards.
All 9 of them. First down.
Ladies and gentledoms, Eustace has completely regressed.
Oh,
And he wasn't very far ahead in life or far along to begin
he
with.
was already emotionally immature enough, but my God, he regressed back to what, like 70 years? 80?
Who knows?
Who knows how old he is?
Ma Bag says,
Want something, do ya?
in the same tone Southern parents might say, I'll give you something to cry about.
Oh, yeah. That's a real thing.
She then whips out the Ooga Booga mask.
Booga, booga, booga.
Dude, first time we've seen it.
First time we've seen the mask.
Yeah, I half expected him to like take it home with him. Like I was like, is this the origin of the Ooga Booga?
I guess it is. I feel like it's the first time we've seen it. I could be wrong.
It certainly just gave him the idea.
Yeah, at very least, it gave him the idea. And it kind of gives the impression that this, not only is this where Eustace gets it to do the same thing to Courage, but this is like something that she used to do to him as a kid.
You're still afraidy, baby.
Which is really cruel.
You're still afraid.
Still. Yes, I've done this to you before, and you react in the same way now that you did when you were a child.
So his overcompensation for it as an adult is to be the thing that is scary.
Right.
As much as possible.
Yes. Ding, ding, ding. Ding, ding, ding. You win the whack-a-mole. You win the prize.
I mean, I get it. It's a sentiment I know very well. But part of growing up is also learning that you can't become the monster.
That's the thing.
You know?
You either become the monster or you change the cycle.
All you have to do is just consume a bunch of horror media and then begin to write your own versions of horror stories, which is what I'm doing.
That's the key. That's it.
That's how I'm surviving.
Your pa was a real man. You can't fill his shoes.
And this is a pretty intense thing to say to anybody.
Dude.
And again, you can tell it's likely not the first time she said it.
This is where it takes a really dark turn.
Yes. I think this must have also struck a nerve with the creators. Because, yeah, they're tiptoeing into these deeper waters.
Yeah.
This very, very harsh thing to say, especially since clearly his paw is no more.
It's brutal.
And the creators, aware that they've just stepped into this place, quickly provide some comic relief because we get a cut to some absurdly large shoes by the door.
The biggest shoes.
The biggest shoes
time.
ever. They're bigger than the room itself.
It felt so ominous.
Yeah, honestly. What did Paw Bag look
Huge
like?
boots. I know how big was this guy. Bigfoot. Ooh.
Maybe we're onto something.
Not a man, huh? I'll show you.
This leads to Eustace arm wrestling his mother to prove his masculinity.
That's the way to do it.
We'll see who's the best man.
You want me to shame you in front of your dog, huh? Okay, let's do it.
I feel like everything goes back to an arm wrestling match on this show, or like
Yeah.
thumb wrestling or whatever, like this
Some silly, like
arbitrary
childish
way to determine who's on
Right.
top. Very childish, for sure.
Yeah, that's how kids settle disputes. Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm just worried about who's going to up and disintegrate because both of them are ancient.
Dude, one of their arms would have just snapped.
Yeah, for sure.
But the whole if I lose,
Aha,
You
here we
lose.
are. We've just arrived there. Eustace, in desperation for courage to do something to help him, then sums up his entire attitude, outlook on life, and relationship with courage in what could be a simple throwaway line, but Lionel plays it just right.
know something? If I lose, you lose, you stupid dog.
It's so much.
It's a lot. That one,
It's so much.
because we see his face say it, like that embodies everything that he feels about courage and the world in general.
Yes.
If I lose, you lose.
And like the only thing that makes it palatable is this ridiculous arm wrestle match.
Right.
If it was just him standing in a room looking at Courage, saying those words, and that was it,
Right.
it would almost be unwatchable in a way.
You could almost not watch it. 'Cause
Almost.
It is so intense and so dark.
It's a lot. Lots of people feel that way.
Mhm.
And they put that onto other people.
Lots of people feel that way. That is the problem with a lot of society, honestly.
Yes.
A lot of people I've seen and known in my life.
If I'm going down and taking the whole thing down with me,
Exactly.
and if I can't have you, nobody can.
There is nothing I despise more, I think, than that attitude.
Ugh.
And once again, I'm so sorry to any kids who lived in a shadow like this growing up.
Thanks for your
Pretty awful.
empathy. Yeah, it sucked.
Resourceful as always, though, Courage retrieves the rejected bouquet and places them right under Ma's nose, causing a sneeze that sends her hair sliding right off of her head. And lo and behold, it's a wig.
My hair!
Cue the waterworks.
Yeah, she proceeds to absolutely lose her shit.
Dude.
She's sobbing, shouting, I'm ugly, collapsing to the floor. This leaves her insecurities on full display, just the same way Eustace's unmet bids for attention broke his own resolve.
Yep.
Neither of them feels worthy. Neither of them is emotionally capable of recognizing this, perhaps Ma even less so than Eustace, or taking any meaningful steps toward resolution. Instead, when they find themselves in this emotionally vulnerable place and feel that discomfort, they must immediately deflect.
How could you love a mother who has no hair?
No, Ma. You always look good to me.
Which reveals that childlike need for approval or
Right.
need to placate your parent. You want that parental approval.
Taking care of the parent emotionally, yeah.
Exactly.
Becoming responsible for their emotions.
You immediately become responsible for your parents' emotions
Right.
in those situations. And it's brutal. It's tough.
Man, oh man.
In response, she says,
Thank you, son. But you're the ugliest boy I ever did see.
They find that common ground finally. It's like,
yes,
I hate you because I love you.
right.
Like, it's such a weird resolution.
Sends them both into a fit of laughter. And Eustace says,
That's my Ma.
Wow. It's just wow.
editing Christian, you need to leave that sigh in.
Yeah, just gonna have to.
And it just goes to show that sometimes we grow fond of, or at least too used to our cages to be able or willing to figure out how to work the latch.
Once again, well said.
Cycles of toxicity persist and persist and persist, and usually at least one party is too stubborn to do anything about it until it's too late.
I live in constant dread of that too late.
Same, so do I. And not only is that real, it's also pretty dark, especially to explore on a kids show.
Pretty dark.
Honestly, the way this episode is written was surprisingly impressive to me because these feelings are so recognizable and identifiable and palpable when you watch it.
Yeah.
And it's sadly such a common, like, post-war American experience. We've talked about that with our intro to Courage episodes.
Right.
Plus, it's an interesting episode in that the vast majority of the content is actually swimming beneath the surface, living in the trenches between the lines.
Mm.
And even if you haven't personally lived it, you've likely seen it around you all your life. Even as a kid, I understood this dynamic on that fundamental human level.
Yeah.
It also speaks to the whole idea, like you talked about earlier with the insecurities, that a bully mostly bullies others about the things they're most insecure about in themselves.
Right.
They can't confront it in themselves, so they take it out on the pieces of themselves that they find elsewhere.
That they see in other people, yeah.
Unfortunately, that also means that it happens in parent-child relationships far more than it should.
Yep.
I do feel like they were trying to give it a bit more grace here, though. Like, oh, see, they're okay. That's just how some people relate to each other. See, there are different ways of relating, and some people just insult each other, and that's just how it is. But in that, I, in a rare moment, honestly, see the age of the show just a little bit, because I think now, 20 years later, we're not as quick to accept that as just okay.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's that even.
It's still hard to overcome in our own lives, but I just mean a lot of us can look at it and call it out now.
I think we see it as a problematic thing.
Right.
And I think like what they were going for was Eustace is never going to change. Eustace is going to stay Eustace. This is not going to influence him or affect him in any way.
Correct.
Because now he sees even more justification for being the way that he is.
Right.
And so I think it's sort of like an anticlimactic, anti-satisfactory conclusion that they were trying to go, yep, the world still sucks.
Yep.
Sorry, kids, but that's
the world
life.
spins madly on. This
Yes.
is how this is.
I don't know if they were trying to like justify it or show like,
I don't know that they were
see
justifying
how some
it. I don't
people
want to
relate.
say they were justifying it, but I think it was still kind of like this is a dynamic that exists in the world, you know, like one of many.
Maybe. I think they were making fun of it. I don't think it was like they were accepting it.
Yeah.
But I don't
mean
who
to
knows?
say that they were accepting it. I think that they were just giving it a little more grace and a little more room than a show might give it today. Like a show like Bluey, although this is apples and oranges because
Bluey.
Courage and Bluey are not the same. But like, yeah, it's like a kid's show, which is very like emotionally intelligent. They might show a dynamic like this, and they would also show the resolution of that or some sort of step toward progress in a more healthy interpersonal
Right.
connection.
Well, this is the 90s we're talking about.
That's what I'm saying. We're seeing the age of the show just a little bit here. Courage and Eustace arrive back at the farmhouse, and Eustace plops down on the couch with the newspaper.
Well, how did it all go?
Yeah, nice visit. Have to do it again real soon.
Courage shows her a Polaroid of the three of them, and Mariel coos,
Isn't that lovely?
and that's Mother's Day.
I do like how Courage is wearing the wig.
Yeah, in that picture.
It's a lot of fun.
Besides just the general wackiness, like we were saying, that Eustace and his mother read as essentially the same age on screen.
Yeah, pretty much.
I guess we've all known mother-child pairs like that when they get up into older age. Makes me think of the SpongeBob episode, the chocolate. Chocolate.
Sweet, sweet
It's
chocolate.
a little bit like that.
I always hated it.
But all that being said, this episode is still one of the most down-to-earth that we see in the series, with really no supernatural elements at all.
It's one of the most relatable, for sure, on a human level.
It stays true to the core of the show at the same time, that deep, dark, emotional horror that comes for all of us sooner or later.
Damn.
So let's close it out with the good old scareometer.
Scareometer.
What's your scareometer reading, Christian?
Well, I have to tell you, Kaylin, I think I'm going to give this one, I'll give it like a 4.
Really? Okay.
Sure. On an emotionally traumatic level. From just the heaping amounts of emotional and verbal abuse, which is what I was served healthy amounts of as a kid. And it makes up a lot of who I am as a person.
Right. Right. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you.
Sure. Around me in the
Which
halls.
is honestly part of the reason why
echoing.
I'm surprised you only gave it a 4.
Yeah.
Is it just too close?
No, I know. I mean, it's just not overtly scary. It's just not a scary episode. Like, it's just, it has to have some element of like fear to it.
Right.
For me to give it a high, like higher than a 5, I would say.
What's the word for it?
It's,
There is not urgency here. The urgency that's created in a lot of horror, like
Yeah,
in
there's-
Weremole,
there's
even,
no suspense
there's
or
a lot of
urgency or,
urgency.
like,
There's no suspense
there
or
are no
urgency,
stakes.
but to me, that almost makes it more scary because it's just a slice of life, a piece of reality. There is no urgency, but it is just as toxic and difficult and cancerous as any scary cryptid could be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like the thought of somebody I really care about just outright insulting me and telling me everything they hate about me would be pretty terrible. But I also kind of expect that to happen like any day.
Right.
I don't feel like it would be that crazy. Like it would hurt.
We both have a bit of a shield because
Yeah.
we go into it
But
with
it's kind of like
a different...
anyone, and it's also happened. Like I've had friends.
It's the imposter syndrome, too.
If this was about imposter syndrome, I'd be giving this at least a 4.5. But no, and I don't really have the whole over, like, you'll never be your father, like, kind of concept. Like, it's just not part of my existence.
Yeah. I don't have that either, to be fair.
I don't have that particular need to impress a parent of any kind.
Right.
Anyone's parent at all. But
I gave mine a 7, actually.
Whoa.
Because the idea of generational curses and the idea of aging into a character that's like this are very scary to me.
Well, yeah. Okay, sure.
I don't think that that's my future. I think I'm a lot more aware than that. But
No, I don't think so.
you know what I mean? Like,
You're way too kind
I've
for
seen
that.
some not so healthy. I do have a lot more kindness in me than, some.
You're way more sympathetic and understanding than like literally anyone else I know have ever known.
Damn, thank you. That's
So.
high praise. That helps a little bit. Maybe I'll bump it down to a 6.
I tell you that all the time.
I don't really
Like,
think that I'm gonna.
It's not news to you.
I don't really think I'm gonna become the monster, but I do. I do really hate that this happens. I hate how prevalent it is,
Right.
and I hate that it's the real life horror that so many of us face every day.
It is very realistic, yeah.
So that's my
You probably won't become the monster unless the hives take over your body and you do transform
into Wasp Woman.
into Wasp Woman, because hives, is it a wasp hive?
Yeah, a wasp. Yeah.
Nest?
No,
It's a
yeah,
wasp nest.
wasp nest.
Beehive. They're all the same.
But wasps can cause hives.
Well, yeah, I think you're on track. I think this actually tracks. This is such...
Man, we started
Man.
making weird connections to my symptoms. We ended making weird connections to my symptoms.
And it's all tied into the harvest moon. Coming up.
Yeah, werewolves, emotional vampires. This episode unexpectedly had everything.
One of our most timely episodes. I love when this happens.
Me too.
I just can't wait for you to complete the transformation during October. I'm excited to meet Wasp Caleb, who howls for some reason.
Oh wait, I should be buzzing, shouldn't I? We have a couple of patrons that we need to say thank you to before we wrap up today.
Yeah, we do.
Thank you, Jason S.
And thanks, Courtney K.
Thank you for being there and supporting the work that we do. And again, we try really hard to put things up on our Patreon when we can. But
We really do.
all that being said, October is going to be a really good time.
Yeah. Ooh.
Next time we get to speak with all of you, it will be our 2nd anniversary episode.
Number
which is
2.
going to kick off our Pretty Dark October tradition of episodes every weekend.
Every weekend.
Or bust. I have it in my notes. Exclamation, exclamation, 1, exclamation, exclamation.
I think
Dear
it's
God, help us all.
I think it's episodes every weekend and bust, because it definitely kills me
You're
every
right.
year.
There is no or there.
I think we explode, we implode, we put ourselves
We
back
implode
together,
first.
we re-explode.
Yes, a couple times. So you
Somewhere
guys
in
will hear
there.
some chaos. Every weekend uploads for a team of 2 people is always a challenge, but
Really hard.
October's spooky time, and we got to make it as spooky as we can for our darklings. So.
And we will. I'm very excited about it.
Oh man, 2nd anniversary coming up. I'm excited.
2nd anniversary, but our 3rd October. Isn't that funny how
3rd October.
how numbers work?
That's correct.
Math is crazy.
Tides, the moon, all the above.
All that stuff. Science. Wow. The Big Bang.
Wow.
Who knew we talk about so much of this stuff?
Much wow.
And if you want some of our bonus content on our Patreon, or just to say thanks if you appreciate what we do here, we would love it if you would join us and subscribe there for only $5 a month.
Patreon.com/TPD podcast.
That's where it is.
As always, you can find us on social medias, Instagram, That's Pretty Dark Podcast, TikTok, That's Pretty Dark. I tried to put out content that is relevant to the media that we're exploring or preparing to explore. So sometimes you'll get a little bit of a sneak peek.
And we have merch.
We have merch.
We keep talking about it.
Yep, it exists. It's out there. That's prettydark.com on the merch tab. You, listener, could be rocking your That's Pretty Dark merch for our anniversary or for October times.
All of October.
You could wear it as a costume to a costume party and be like, I'm a darkling for Halloween. That'd be funny.
Oh, that's so great. We should make little buttons or something that says, I'm a darkling.
I'm a darkling.
An official darkling.
That's pretty dark.
But the main
you
thing
guys.
with the merch is the more merch we sell, the more we can afford to do new designs with even some fan art.
Oh, yeah. That's something that we definitely want to look into.
Putting the money back into merch to make you guys cooler, better stuff.
Oh, yeah. This is all for you guys. This is all for the love of the game. This is all for the love of the show and the vibes.
That's right. We love
I'm itchy. Sorry. I'm breaking my arm in half to itch my hives.
scratch. I'm scratching my hives.
I really hope that next time I speak with you, I'm better, but if not,
Hope so.
you'll hear me howling at the moon.
That makes 2 of us.
Ow! 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 Ow!
Bow wow.
Pow! Wow!
Bow wow. We'll catch you next time.
See you later. Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to That's Pretty Dark, written and produced by Christian Baxter Mott and Kaylin Andrews.
Our music is composed by Jonathan Simmons, and our art is provided by Paige Garland at Power Girl Illustration.
Join the collective nostalgia and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at That's Pretty Dark Podcast.
Share your experiences and let us know what shows, films, or villains still haunt you from childhood at that'sprettydarkpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, you're never really alone.
So, until next time, sweet dreams, everyone.
Just keep soaking it. There's nothing to worry about. Just keep soaking it.